Okay, hola. If you have questions, you can put them in the comments. Si tienes preguntas, los puedes poner en los comentarios. Em, Acuérdense, I am an immigration attorney. I am not your immigration attorney. So I can't do super personalized answers, but I will do my best. Okay, Grace, do you think they will take DACA away? I don't know. DACA is one of the few programs that I think actually is might be somewhat protected because it would cause such an uproar to get rid of it. Right? There are so many mixed status families in the United States. Attacking DACA might be the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of angering enough people that his administration might lose steam in a lot of supporters. But I'm not sure. That's just me being optimistic and hoping that they think logically about taking steps against DACA. We already know they've taken steps against DACA, but I don't think they're going to. I hope they're not going to stop the renewal availability. I don't know that they'd open it back up, but I would hope they keep the renewal availability. And I'm, for the first time ever, going live on 2 devices. So I'm sorry if I'm scattered, but I'm going to do my best here. I'm also doing this on YouTube. Okay. Ay. Love in lyrics. What happens when a DACA recipient gets stopped by ICE? Well, hopefully with your work authorization, they could take you and process you, but hopefully they would not detain you for an extended period of time or try to put you in removal proceedings. It's not that DACA recipients cannot be placed in removal proceedings. They can. DACA recipients are placed in removal proceedings all the time, but usually it's because the government is saying that they are no longer eligible for their DACA status, like they committed a crime, and so they shouldn't have the benefit of having DACA. But as you know, DACA is a deferred action, and so in theory, they cannot, if you have DACA, they cannot deport you, right? Talia, how long is the I-601A taking? Last time I checked, about 2.5 years. About 2.5 years. Thank you for the gifts, Grace, Itzel. Thank you. Grace, when the Supreme Court reviews, will they only review ending DACA in Texas, or that DACA is illegal? No, they will likely review nationwide. In other words, the lower courts held that, oh gosh, I'm getting a bunch of invites, that the damages or the harm can only be proven by Texas in terms of standing, but I imagine that issue is also appealed. So that will be taken up by the Supreme Court. It would be nationwide. Yes, somebody says I-360 approvals are no longer coming with deferred action. That is absolutely right. So that's the, for example, SIJS status is no longer granting deferred action. So it is unfortunate. You're essentially might have that approved, but then you're put on the wait, right, with the priority date to file for the adjustment, and you are not protected during that period. All for you. Hi, I'm ordered removed process, but file I-130. So do I have to be worried about anything? Absolutely. So with the I-130s pending, if you have a removal order, we have been hearing that people may be called in for interviews on the I-130s. And when they get called in for interviews and they have a removal order, they may be detained. So just having an I-130 pending is not going to give you any type of protection if you have a removal order. I would see if you have options to reopen and terminate that removal order. Elizabeth Camargo Jimenez, do I think the alien registration requirement will be blocked? I don't know. That's a great question. There are certainly, I believe, legal basis to block it in terms of, the right to not self-incriminate. A lot of the questions require self-incrimination, right? So we will see where the courts end up on this. I hope it's blocked. I believe it should be. I don't know what's going to happen though. Gideon, I attended green card interview 2 days ago and my case is actively review. What's happening? I don't know. Where did you attend it? Was it inside of the country? Was it outside of the country? If it was outside of the country, then, a lot of cases at consular appointments get placed in like admin processing. They might do further background checks. Additionally, with the green card inside of the country, if it's an adjustment, they have the right to review everything and make sure that what you said in the interview is correct and lines up with their record. So I cannot speculate what they are reviewing in your case. I don't know what type of green card it is, if it's a spousal petition, etc. JP Lopez Co. Hi, I need ICE to join a motion to reopen. I have an I-130 approved, live in Florida. So it is much harder now to get ICE to join in on a motion to reopen and I assume terminate than it was 5 months ago. This administration, I would not count on ICE, OPLA joining on a motion to reopen unless they absolutely have to, like, if it's part of a settlement, like the Calderon settlement that I've spoken a lot about, where they are required to join in on it. I don't know that they're going to join on a motion to reopen. I think you might just be filing with the judge and having a judge make a decision on that. Gwendolyn, we send the waiver January 2023. How much longer do we have to wait? So again, it's about 2.5 years. You can do the math on that. It's about 2.5 years. Kush 97, when hiring a paralegal, what does your firm look for to see if they're a good fit? Well, one, experience. Do you know how to do the job? Or do we have to train you? At least a basic level of experience in what we do. But secondly, and probably more importantly, is a culture fit. Someone that doesn't take themselves too seriously, because the work is very grueling and serious. So if you don't have a good rapport with the team, that can really bring the entire team down. And we value that above anything. Okay, so it's a spousal petition, Gideon. Yeah, so we sent spousal petition, green card, AOS. Yeah, I have no idea what they're reviewing, right? They have the right to review anything. So it's so speculative. I don't know what country you're from. I don't know if they could review if they believe you have communist ties, right? So it's just very difficult to speculate. Viper 2026. Does an initial RFE under 245I delay the I-765 approval? It could. The thing about the I-765 while you're pending an AOS is that it is super, super hard to know when they're going to send it. Generally speaking, I tell my clients it's about 3 to 5 months after we send the AOS. However, we have had cases in the last year where it's taken 1.5 years or close to 2 years to get the work authorization for no apparent reason. In other words, they are eligible for adjustment. And we've had to do multiple inquiries, and maybe they just got caught up in the system. JP Lopez Co. Should I relocate from Florida to one of the states that are on the settlement, and have you had any clients? Yes, I've had clients, and whether or not to relocate is definitely a personal decision. If it is your only option, it is a great option, right? Because they have to join in on that motion. But every family circumstance is different. If you do not have a choice, especially if your removal order was in absentia, right? And you don't really have a reason for why you didn't show up to court, that it's really hard to get those reopened and terminated, because you have to state, why you didn't go to court. Thank you. Thank you for the gifts. Um, so with the Calderon settlement, you don't need to give a reason. You just have to show that you're eligible under the settlement, that you're married to a US citizen, you have a prior removal order, and you live in one of those states at the time that you file the motion. Again, the removal order doesn't need to be entered in New England, and the removal order, and it doesn't matter whether you were living in New England, prior. Love and Lyrics, it's called the Calderon settlement, and it is to reopen and terminate removal orders for a certain group of people, and it's a really, really great option. Fantasy Flowers and Gifts. Good morning, abogada. I got the extension letter. Great for my I-751. Can I still travel? What do you recommend? I don't know if you can still travel, but I will tell you what I'm saying about traveling with the I-751, extension. I'm going to assume that this was a joint petition and you are still with your spouse. Okay. And I am also going to assume that you are not placed in removal proceedings. In that case, I would say generally it is okay for individuals to travel. Now, we did hear a couple months ago at the beginning of Trump taking office, individuals with the I-751 pending who had the extension letter traveling and getting stuck. Now, I would still get the stamp, right? The I-551 stamp. But now, the people who were detained when they were reentering, it's because they actually had a decision on the I-751 while they were out of the country. It appears that this is what had happened. They were out of the country, they got some type of decision on it, and so they got a denial while they were out. And then upon reentering, they had already been placed in removal proceedings. That's my understanding of what happened. JP Lopez, you can call. I think I put a phone number in the description of this. You can call that. Okay. You can call that number for a consult. Okay. Eric OS, can I hold my pending I-45 marriage and apply I-360 VAWA with the same I-45? I don't know what you're saying. Are you saying that you have AOS based on your current marriage, and then you want to withdraw that and apply for the VAWA? Good. Fantasy Flowers, it sounds like you're in a good position. Mo Abdos, my friend left the US in 2021, and 2 weeks ago they sent him the asylum approval notice. Can he come back? If he left prior to the approval, then it is going to be deemed that he likely abandoned that asylum. And so, no, they will not. They're not going to let him in. More likely than not. DGM, what is dismissal granted without prejudice in the immigration court, and can an I-601A be filed? Absolutely. So dismissal granted in immigration is just that your case was essentially terminated. Terminated and dismissed are the same thing. Dismissed essentially means the prosecutor or ICE decided not to continue with the case. So they've dismissed the prosecution of that case. Termination essentially means a judge issued the termination. Okay. Saludos. Hola. Patricia, how long for the NVC, National Visa Center, to approve our case? I don't know. So one thing is to be documentarily qualified, and that doesn't take too long after you submit the documents. I'd say maybe months. But then the issue is once the NVC documentarily qualifies you, it gets sent over to your home consulate, and that's usually what takes a lot of time. Because then you're put on a list, right, for an interview. Depending on the country, that could range from 3 weeks to a year and a half. Okay, someone asked, the Republicans voted on a bill to deport US citizens. I haven't read into it tons, but It's not a bill to deport US citizens. It was a bill where it had a clause stating it is illegal and the government cannot deport US citizens. And essentially they took out that clause. So if you read between the lines, it's saying they can deport US citizens, but it's not specifically a bill stating that. That's my understanding. I haven't looked into it, in detail. Shokuo Fei. Hi, anyone who has I've seen your messages here. I just am not understanding them. Maybe you can give me more context. Anyone who has a green card, what should I do if the law has been passed? What law are you talking about? Leslie Coral, hola, ¿es verdad que alguien ilegal ya no podrá viajar en avión? Sí, porque si no tienes un Real ID, ¿vale? No, TSA en seguridad no te van a dejar pasar por seguridad. Un pasaporte que no es estadounidense no va a servir. Sin embargo, un permiso de trabajo sí es válido. ¿Ok? Esto es para viajar dentro de los Estados Unidos. Si quieres salir, pues con tu pasaporte de tu país puedes salir. Chef Oz, can I expedite my 601A waiver? It is very difficult, almost impossible. So I'm not going to say no, but it is very difficult. Can I convert my pending I-45 to VAWA already sent home? Did you already have an approved I-360? Rewards loyalty. When does an immigration judge decision become final? Usually they give a date when they issue the decision in terms of, how long you have to appeal. It's typically 30 days. So if after 30 days nobody has appealed, then it becomes final. Okay. Amanda, I put in my husband's I-130 and I-485 in January of 2025. We haven't heard anything yet. When you mean you haven't heard anything yet, you mean you haven't had a decision or you haven't even gotten a receipt? Because decision, fine, that doesn't surprise me that you haven't gotten a decision on an adjustment of status. But if you haven't gotten a receipt, then that's concerning. Ok, alguien me está preguntando en YouTube sobre tienes que mantener activo un caso en la NBC. Básicamente tienes que entrar al portal. Parece ser que lo hizo el individuo por su propia cuenta. Tienes que entrar al portal, ¿vale? Para mantener el caso activo. DJ Chavi, can I be denied entry to the US with a green card over a conviction in driving with no license? So generally speaking, traffic convictions are not an issue. I assume that you don't have any warrants out there. You've taken out, you've paid the fees or fines. And everything is taken care of on paper. In general, it shouldn't be an issue, but obviously without reviewing your specific case, I can't tell you for sure it's not an issue, but generally speaking, traffic things are not a problem. Gabriela, my USCIS says my I-45, it's on its last step and skipped interview. Would I still get an interview? It seems like you might be, it seems like you might be getting an approval without an interview, which is great, or a decision. I'll say without an interview. Hopefully it's an approval. If you haven't gotten an RFE or a notice of intent to deny, I would venture to say it's an approval. And, I have heard that they are still issuing some approvals without interviews. So I know they said they were going to be interviewing everyone, but I have heard that's not necessarily the case. Ok, Jusobi. Oh, wait, Yuri Brito, buenas tardes. Mandé el perdón I-601, ¿cuánto dura? Yuri, ¿es el I-601 o el I-601A? Porque esos son dos perdones diferentes. Si me lo quieres clarificar, el I-601A es como 2 años y medio en este momento. Okay, Juso B21, does one have to register a do the registration 325R for a consular visit in Juarez? So here's the thing about the registration. You've now probably done the I-130. You've done the I-601A and done biometrics, right? Neither of which on paper say that, technically you're registered. Now you have a consular appointment in Juarez. Why wouldn't you register before going? You don't want it held against you. And at that point, that you're already in the system and you're almost at the end of your process. The chances of being detained are probably slim, especially if you do it before, right before leaving. Obviously, consult with your attorney, but that's what I would say. If you've gotten your appointment, just register before going so that at your appointment, they don't deny for failing to register. Adrián, sí hay que pagar fees para mantener el caso activo. Entonces hay que registrarte cada año, ¿no? Y sí hay que pagar. Son $100 para una consulta. Okay. Gabrielle, is it because I'm married to a sergeant in the military? No, I don't think so. You mean the approval without interview? No. Caroline Diaz 125, approved I-130 and pending I-212. What can I do if I get deported? Do you have a pending I-212 at the same time as the I-601A, or are you waiting to get the I-212 approved? And then do the I-601A? Okay, Embellished in Mode said that we heard back from the G325R from my husband. They sent us a courtesy letter last week. What did they say? Did they just say you've complied with your registration? Elsie, si tengo un caso con inmigración, ¿debo registrarme? Depende de qué caso es, ¿vale? Si has sometido el ajuste de estatus, no tienes que registrarte. Pero hay... mira, hay una herramienta ahora en la página de UCIS donde tú puedes seleccionar, dicen, ver si tienes que registrarte y después te hacen preguntas, ¿no? ¿Qué tienes sometido? ¿De dónde eres? ¿Cómo entraste? Etcétera. Y te dicen si hay que registrarse, ¿vale? Es un tool que puedes usar. Perdón, Adrián, no tienes que pagar los fees, lo siento. Lo siento. Sabía que no, después me dudé. No tienes que pagar fees, solo tienes que reentrar por lo menos una vez al año al portal. ¿Ok? Dubs only. Initially came to US on F1, now on TPS. F1 OPT expired. Can I do change of status to F1 again? I don't know. You haven't accrued unlawful presence. I don't think so, though. No. No, you can't. If your original F1 has expired and that stay has expired. I'm pretty sure the answer is no, but I don't do F1s. So I'm not probably not the right person for it. JP Lopez Go. Please give me a time frame if we file for the ICE settlement. So it expires January 2027. Okay. In other words, you have to have it done or submitted before then. Generally, I would say estimate a year because I would rather overestimate, but realistically, maybe it could be 6 months. Harleen, I have an interview coming for AOS, but my US citizen husband is in jail for DUI. Any tips for me? Well, I guess I have a lot of questions. Like, is this a temporary thing? Is he getting out soon? You might be able to reschedule the interview. If not, then, you'll have to ask for his presence or her presence, husband to be waived. Maybe you can get an affidavit. You might even be able to ask for a phone interview, but I would first, is he getting out anytime soon, and just ask for the interview to be maybe rescheduled. Embellished. He complied and he will not be able to process his application. They closed his registration place. Great. That's awesome. That's great. I'm glad to hear it. Angélica de la Rosa, ¿cuánto tiempo se tarda para recibir la cita en Juárez? Como año y medio. Okay. Do I recommend applying for advanced parole? With DACA and no removal order? Sure. But if you have a removal order, I would not travel with advanced parole right now. Okay, Eddie Fosso, being on green card now, planning on for citizenship next year. Can I bring my mom on a visitor visa? Okay. Someone can't, this is a common misconception, is that you can sponsor somebody for a visitor visa. You can give letters and say they're coming to visit me, but that just supports their, non-immigrant intent, that they're going to return to the United States, to their home country after their visit to the United States. So when people say sponsor letters, it's a little bit misleading because there's no sponsors for tourist visas. It's just a letter saying, hey, they're coming to visit me. However, I would argue that those letters don't carry much weight. I think what carries more weight when you do a tourist visa is, what is their situation in their home country? What is their family situation? Are they married? Are they leaving behind a spouse with kids? Or are they single or, widowed? Do they not have anything to return to? Do they have a property and lots of assets in their home country? Do they have a job? Essentially, do they have a nice, comfortable life? If they do, they're more likely to get a tourist visa. If not, then they are less likely to get a tourist visa. Okay? However, being a citizen, you can sponsor your mom to just move here. You could do that once you get your citizenship. If she already has a tourist visa and she comes to visit you and then later decides to stay, you could do the green card. However, the adjustment of status. However, if she already knew she was staying prior to entering, then that is fraud, right? So she can't say she's coming as a tourist, knowing full well that she's actually coming to stay so that you can petition for her. Okay? Mamadou, can I help us with immigration? Yes. I saw you say, can I answer your message? I can't answer consultations via like TikTok message, but you can call my phone number in my profile. Okay, Ingrid, if one just applied for a U visa, should one register or wait to see if government changes? Ooh, that's tough. I don't know your situation, so I'm not giving you personally any advice. I can't tell anybody not to register. I will say that with a U visa, I don't think you're considered registered. So legally, I can't tell you not to. So I think you would have to. That being said, I can also tell you the effects of registering, which, I believe for individuals who are not close to being done with their process may, that information may be used against them. And a U visa is a very long wait time, so you are not close to being done with that process. Okay. Man, is someone in withholding of removal status safe and remain safe under this administration? Well, that's a good question, right? This is Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who had withholding of removal. Generally, prior to this administration, I would say, yeah, you're generally safe here. But they have said that, sure, what withholding means we can't send you back to your home country because there's a fear of, persecution or harm in your home country. It doesn't mean we can't send you to a third country. That being said, I don't know what third country would take you. We know that the situation with El Salvador, first of all, right now is completely enjoined, right, from removing anyone, but also was limited to specific people. And, in Kilmar's case, he actually was from El Salvador, and that was the issue, is that they didn't realize he had withholding. But anyway, or no, they realized he had withholding. They thought he shouldn't have been granted withholding, and essentially it didn't apply anymore. I would say, generally speaking, it still is safer than having nothing, but it's not as safe as it once was, right? Team Canguro, I have the judge's visa juvenil, but I don't have number A, and I turned 21 this year. I don't know what you mean. What I can tell you is that for SIJS petition, you have to both have the judge's predicate order and filed the I-360 prior to turning 21. You don't have to have a decision made, but you have to have it filed, okay? Eliane, have I had to do a case with political asylum? I've done many cases. Okay. Monica Givia, any recommendations or updates for I-130 through my son? Well, this hinges, Monica, on how you entered the United States, assuming you are in the United States, and if you're eligible for adjustment of status in any way, right? So after your I-130 through your son, what is your plan? Do you have a parent or a spouse who can do a 601A waiver for you? Thank you, Gabriela. Okay, Gabriela, my social security number hasn't come with my work authorization. Okay, I'm going to say this. Go and make an appointment at the Social Security Administration. On April 8th, we got an email from Ayla stating that, USCIS was no longer going to be sending your information to the Social Security Administration so that you automatically get your Social Security card. In other words, now people have to go make appointments at the Social Security Administration to get their Social Security cards. So go do that. That's what you need to do. So I don't know what you mean. What number do you use? Your Social Security number? You don't have one. You have to go get one. Okay. This is somewhat recent. I made a video about it and I got a lot of hate because people said, oh, this isn't new. I had to do that. And it's true. Back in the day, people had to do that. And also, if you didn't select for USCIS to send your information to Social Security Administration, then, people have had to continue to do that. But generally speaking, we've always had them issued at the same time. And so our clients didn't have to go make appointments at the Social Security Administration. Juliet, tengo mi entrevista pronto en Guatemala y pedí Advance Pro de emergencia y todavía no me llegó. No entiendo exactamente la razón por la cual pediste Advance Pro de emergencia. Si tienes la entrevista en Guatemala, ¿por qué no sales a la entrevista? Si es pronto, ¿quieres salir antes? No entiendo la situación. Quizás me puedes dar más detalles. Okay, can you travel after a 212H waiver was approved with a green card by a judge out of removal? I'm confused. Rewards loyalty. Do you have a green card? Are you a green card holder? You're no longer in removal? You have your LPR card? Then you can travel. No, you can't use your USCIS number, Gabriela. Beatriz, disculpa, ¿cuánto tiempo está tardando el perdón? Estoy pedida por un ciudadano. Supongo que estás hablando del perdón I-601A por presencia no legal y más o menos 2 años y medio. Somebody asked me about withholding order. Di Maria, if someone has withholding of removal, can they try to get the deportation order vacated? You can reopen under certain circumstances. I would ask, what are your circumstances? What is your change in circumstances? Do you have some approved eligibility, like an I-130 or an I-360? Yeah. What is the foundation to reopening? User 815284. What happens if I was arrested but never charged nor had a court order? USCIS wants proof. Just try to go get your certified disposition of, well, there's no charge. So go get your police records and show that that you're clean, I suppose. Usually with biometrics, though, they would see that. So I don't know where you were arrested, but let's say it's Chicago, Cook County, then you can go to Cook County to get a statement that you don't have any, cases. Some certified, background check, Washington. Yeah. Yep. So that's what I would do. You get your state police background check. Yeah, rewards. I mean, once you have the green card, as long as you don't commit a crime afterwards, you're generally okay, right? You've already been adjudicated, or the judge has already adjudicated that you're eligible for a green card despite your criminal history. So that matter has been, decided. Now, if you get your green card and later commit a crime, absolutely, it's a risk to travel. Juliet, tengo DACA y mi abogada pidió advance parole de emergencia para poder ir a mi entrevista a Guatemala. Ok. Por si acaso no te aprueban, ¿por eso lo hizo? O no, la verdad es que no lo entiendo esta estrategia. Si tienes DACA y quieres pedir Advance Pro para hacer el ajuste dentro de los Estados Unidos, pues haces eso. Y luego reentras con el parol y haces el ajuste. Por otra parte, si tienes DACA nunca has acumulado presencia no legal, vas a tu entrevista consular, supongo que quizás es una protección, ¿no? Mm, por si no te aprueban estando fuera, todavía tienes el permiso de reentrada, pero normalmente, am, a ver, que yo no he escuchado esa estrategia muchas veces. Si me puedes clarificar, quizás, ¿sabes? Me puedes confirmar eso. No sé en qué se basa tu entrevista de residencia, si es basado en matrimonio, si ella tiene alguna razón por creer que no te van a aprobar. Yeah, it's Kika. Are we able to get the test waived? What test? What test are you talking about? Okay, D. Maria, what's the process for the I-601A waiver for someone with withholding already have the I-130 approved? So then you're right. You are, you are filing that motion to reopen would be the right step, more likely than not. Abogada, ¿hay alguna instrucción especial para viajar a México si tengo doble ciudadanía? ¿Usas el pasaporte estadounidense para salir de los Estados Unidos? ¿Usas el mexicano para entrar a México? ¿Usas el mexicano para salir de México y el estadounidense para reentrar a los Estados Unidos? ¿Vale? Entras y sales con el pasaporte del país. Bueno, usas el pasaporte del país donde estás entrando o saliendo. ¿Ok? User 20. Abogada, ¿qué tan difícil son las firmas para certificación de visa U en Louisville, Kentucky? Ni idea. Ni idea, depende del condado, el departamento de policía. No te lo puedo decir, right? Tienes que entender que hay miles de condados y quizás cientos de miles de departamentos de policía. Entonces, right, por casualidad no me sé el de Louisville, Kentucky, pero supongo que quizás es más favorable que otros departamentos en Kentucky de lugares más rurales, depende, ¿no? Típicamente en lugares alrededor de una ciudad son más progresivos y quizás sí te lo firman, pero cada departamento tiene su propia manera de hacerlo. Ale Villanova. Okay, abogada, are unlawful entries as a minor waived? No, no. And so there's a big confusion with entry, unlawful entry, or entry without inspection as a minor and not accruing unlawful presence as a minor, right? You could have an unlawful entry and not be here legally as a minor. At the age of 18, you start to accrue that unlawful presence. But absolutely, it counts as an entry without inspection and could be you could be subject to a permanent bar even if your entries were as a minor. Luis Diaz, who's being targeted by the deportation of citizens? I don't know what you're talking about unless you're talking about this bill from today that I don't have a lot of information about. What I understand is that they wanted to take out a portion of a bill stating that we cannot deport US citizens. Like they took that out. It's not necessarily saying we will deport US citizens. It's also my understanding that they were talking about it in the context of criminals who are in jail or in detention, and essentially saying that they can detain them elsewhere, right? After, like, instead of I have a criminal case in Texas, I'm serving jail time or prison time in Texas, that they can essentially serve that time outside of the US. Like that's a context in which it's been spoken about, but honestly, I don't know. I haven't read enough about it. I do know that the bill was not, we can deport US citizens. It was, there's this bill about something else, and part of it said, and all, by the way, we're going to make it illegal to deport US citizens, and they took that part out. Not that it has a different effect, but I always go to secondary coming back, then they give me my passport without explanation. I could not tell you why. I have no idea why they place some people in secondary every time. It could be that your name is similar to somebody on some type of list. Um, you know, you can ask them, but yeah, I have no idea. It's all speculation, right? Lester, hola abogada, ¿cómo la puedo contactar? Mi información está en mi perfil. Okay. Hello, can I renew LPR with new address? Do I still need to file change of address? Yes, still file the change of address. Okay. Juliet Victoria, es por matrimonio, perdería mi DACA automáticamente. Si te aprueban la residencia, lógico que pierdes la DACA. Ya no eres estatus de DACA, right? Estatus protegida, eres ya residente. Luis Diaz, should I travel outside of the country? I'm a permanent resident. Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you whether or not to travel. I will say, generally the people at risk when they travel, who are anything other than natural born citizens, because even naturalized citizens, they can always be reviewed if they think that you got your citizenship through fraud, right? The general consensus is, if you haven't committed a crime, right? Since you got your LPR card, your citizenship, and you got it in a non-fraudulent way, you generally should be okay. I'm assuming you have a 10-year green card, a permanent resident, right? Not a conditional. But, of course, people can be, they can review these at any time. They can review applications at any time. They can always question the basis to you becoming a green card. Was it through fraud? Did you file a fraudulent asylum application to get approved to get your green card? But generally speaking, I mean, the chances of that are pretty low. And assuming you haven't committed a crime, and you were honest, I would say the chances for most people are low. That being said, as I say, I am an immigration attorney. I'm not your immigration attorney. So definitely, consult with your attorney if you have one, or schedule a consult with an attorney regarding your specific case. Bian, great question. Any updates on green card pause for asylees? Not that I know of. And I was actually thinking of that. I don't know if it was today or yesterday, but that's a great question. I don't know when they are going to announce anything. I assume there's litigation. I don't even know, but I assume that there's litigation regarding that. But great question. I have not heard anything yet. Okay. Bree, any update on DACA? No, not that I know of, not as of today. Let me see. Trying to see when I think that we'll have, some final decision. I don't know. The implementation date, right? The effective date was March 11th. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know when the district court will issue a decision regarding, the appellate court's decision. I was trying to remember when this was last up. How long to get a receipt for I-751 removal of conditions? So regardless of the process, I generally tell my clients 3 or 4 weeks. Beyond that, you know, is would start to be abnormal. Now, my husband has DACA and has traveled on AP, but has a deportation order in absentia. Is it hard to remove? I'm glad that he was able to travel with advanced parole with a removal order, and good for him because he is adjustable now, right? Um, I don't know the reason for his in absentia removal order. I don't know why he didn't appear. It's a lot easier if he was a minor because then you say, hey, I entered with my mom, my dad, or whatever, and they didn't take me to court. But I would say he has a good case to try because he's adjustable, right? And then there's always the Calderon settlement. I'm pushing it a lot because I think it's a really great option if you are a US citizen. Free Spirit USA, will appealing a FOIA partial denial hurt my defensive asylum claim? What do you mean, a FOIA partial denial? You mean they denied turning over records? I don't think it should hurt your defensive asylum. I mean, it shouldn't hurt your defensive asylum claim. I could see how politically they might take it into account, but in theory, it shouldn't. Okay, I have another question here on my other live. Oh, de nada, Adrián. Usted también. Okay. Eva Nomad, could having a lot of debt and not having savings, but making good money be cause for good moral character denial? Is this for a N400? So generally speaking, civil debts, unless it's like child support, right? Or something leading to an arrest or contempt of court or like evasion. Oh, a marriage green card. Again, private civil debt is not generally taken into account. I would assume you don't have any judgments from government agencies. So generally speaking, no. You're welcome. Nat, he was 12. Parents didn't bring him over. You could still try based on the minor. I don't think it like hurts to try. At the end of the day, he has DACA, so he's protected. So that's one of the few situations where under this administration, I would try it because he has DACA. He's eligible for adjustment. He's in a good position, right? Like they can't execute that removal order. Does that make sense, Nat? You're welcome. Yeah. Where was it? That also kind of, I imagine it's Texas or somewhere in the South, wherever he entered from. He was NTA'd, right? And then never went. At 12, I would still try to make the argument. Again, he has DACA, so they can't execute the removal order. They could deny, sure, but show proof of being eligible for adjustment. Worst case scenario, try Calderon. So, Renee, why do you think I haven't received my receipt number from my petition I submitted in February? I don't know. That is a long time, and I would say definitely follow up. Are you sure it was received? If you have proof, did you send it tracking? Was it online? I don't know what type of petition it was, but definitely, inquire. I would say maybe the only thing I can think of is if you're one of those people where they paused adjudication, maybe that includes even receipts. So if you're one of those people, they said that they're going to pause adjudication of certain applications of people who have asylum or who have like humanitarian parole, TPS, and they're now applying for a green card. Those were going to be temporarily paused, maybe. I don't know. But I would definitely inquire. That's outside of the normal time frame for getting a receipt. Okay. Luis Sanchez, I have I-751 pending since November 2021. So, okay, it's quite a long time. How long more I have to wait for approval? Honestly, Luis, if you have the I-751 pending, that means it was through marriage. Are you still married? If so, why don't you file for the N400? That might be faster. And then they'll do a double approval at the N400. They'll approve the I-751 to remove. Oh, you already divorced. Maybe that's why. Did you change that? Okay. Let me see. You're welcome, Renee. W Travel Redress Inquiry Program. What is this for? Someone told me to do this. It's to figure out why you're placed in secondary or you have issues upon entry, but I don't think it'll tell you if you're on any watch list, which, might be one of the reasons that you're placed in secondary every time. But let me see. It definitely won't remove you from the list. I don't think it can hurt. Maybe you're wrongly flagged and you'd like to know that, at least to address it upon reentry. David MQ, I entered with a conditional green card the first time, no problems. Is it safe to travel again? I don't know. Do you still have your conditional green card? Do you have your permanent green card? A lot of things are relevant to this. Matela, is it possible to get a lawyer who can work on my work permit? You cannot ask for a work authorization without something else pending. A work authorization is not something that you can just seek independently, okay? You have to have something else that it falls under, whether it's TPS, whether it's DACA, whether it's a pending adjustment, whether it's a deferred action of some sort, okay? Though you can get work authorizations with those. Beto co-creator, hi, do you know any study abroad programs for DACA recipients? Is it safe to go and re-enter? Generally, if you don't have a removal order, especially, and you are going for one of those study abroad programs, it is pretty safe. There's a lot. There are a lot of like programs. There's cultural like immersion programs. You can look online. There's some that are only like a week or even a long weekend, like Thursday to Monday, and it is for the purpose of like cultural classes, doing business in Mexico, even some language components, going sightseeing, and but they're educational in nature. I would definitely look them up. Zelaya, hi, I won withholding of removal even though having a criminal record. What can happen now? If you have withholding of removal, then essentially, you are being withheld from being deported. Now, we of course know that the Trump administration has stated that just because somebody has withholding of removal, that means you're not going to be removed to your home country because they fear, you fear persecution or harm in your home country. But they are saying that doesn't mean we can't deport you to a third country. Um, this isn't a common practice, though. We know right now it's in the news. I would say just try to lay low. If you have withholding of removal, generally speaking, it means you can stay here and you can get a work authorization, but you, won't be able to file for some type of adjustment. Jack, I don't understand your question. I applied for prosecutorial discretion and joined in a motion to reopen and dismiss proceedings applied in August. Okay, what is your question? You don't have a decision on that? Um, they're probably not going to give you prosecutorial discretion. Okay, that's not. They're no longer issuing PD. Depending on the reasons for asking them to join in a motion, I don't know how strong it is, but we are not counting on that by OPLA now, right? The ICE attorneys, we're not counting on them joining on our motions to reopen. So I would not expect them to grant you PD at this point, especially if it's been pending since August. Okay? Ignacio, you can ask for a replacement naturalization certificate. It's the N565. Yes, N565. You're welcome. Dalila Pineda, hi, I have an I-45 interview this month, but we just realized that the person who filled the application had a lot of mistakes. What can I do? I would ask, are these material mistakes? Do they take out, your eligibility for whatever it is that you're applying for, or are they kind of like clerical errors? If they're clerical, it's not as serious. I would take corrected versions of the form. So whatever the mistakes are, take the corrected, take a page and correct it so that you can give it to the officer at the interview. Now, if they are substantive mistakes or they affect your eligibility, then that's a bigger question, right? And I would, I don't know what the types of mistakes they are, but if they're just clerical, like, oh, my birthday is reversed, or my last name is misspelled by one letter, I would just take the corrections on a new form and take it to the interview with you. Okay. Oh my gosh. 1 second. Okay. They're telling me they're going to end my live here. One second. I'm sorry. Adam Andrade, should I travel back home from Hawaii? Green card holder with old criminal record. Well, that's a domestic flight, right? And if it's an old criminal record, I assume it's prior to you getting your green card. Generally, it should be okay if you're in Hawaii. I don't know what do you mean back home? sorry, you want to leave the country and then re-enter again. Generally, if you, the criminal record is prior to getting your green card, it should be okay. If it's afterwards and it is something that might, make them issue an NTA and, have you run the risk of them saying you're no longer eligible for your green card, then, I would definitely consult with an attorney. I don't know how serious it is. I don't know when it is, but I would consult so that they can review. So you live in LA and you want to go to Hawaii. Well, the good news is that's not an international flight. So you're not going through customs. Obviously, you still run the risk of at any point running into CBP or ICE at anywhere, but at least they're not scrutinizing it as carefully. Yeah, NRAD. I was asked for citizenship in Puerto Rico going back to California. I believe it. But still, in theory, you're not going through customs. Embellished in modes, you're asking why, but I don't know what you're asking why about. Oh, why are they wanting to end my life? It said due to inactivity. And I had to verify I was still there, but it wasn't letting me. It was saying I was still inactive. So someone is asking about that 212. How long does that take? I would say about a year. Thank you. Sir Caleb, please, what's the update on Form I-129, who got RFE since August 2024, and a decision has not been taken? I don't know what your update on your is it a I-129F for a fiance and you got an RFE? Is that what that is in August and you replied? I would say that if you replied in August or September or whenever of 2024, you're about, oh, H-1B. Sorry, don't do H-1Bs. I'm not the right person for you. I'm sorry. Sorry, I'm getting another thing. Okay, Osmaida. Hi, I paid the immigrant fee before entering the US. It's been a month and I received social security number, but I haven't received my residency card. Do you know how long until I get it? Yeah, maybe 4 to 6 weeks. But it sounds like you paid the fee, so you're on top of it. I would say 4 to 6 weeks, and after that, make an inquiry. So you're right on the cusp there. Okay. Okay, I have removal order on asylum and VAWA case approved. Motion to reopen with BIA is pending. Am I safe? If you have the I-485 pending, I'm trying to think of how to frame this. If you have the I-485 pending, you're not removable where the I-485 is pending, okay? If you were granted deferred action, then also you are could be safe, right? If you don't have deferred action, then you're not necessarily automatically safe. And if you don't have the pending I-485, not necessarily. There's a discretionary stay of removal, but it's not automatic. Okay? So it's a little bit complicated. Adam Andrade. So our main office is in Chicago, but we have satellite offices. Okay. More Limes. My 360 visa juvenil, mi 360 visa juvenil está aprobada en 2016. Ok, en 2017 me casé, puedo aplicar la I-485. De parte del matrimonio, sí, puedes. Si tu priority date no está vigente, puedes hacerlo, pero con la I-130. Suponiendo que tienes una entrada legal. Entonces, no sé. Una cosa, las dos no necesariamente están conectadas. Nat, can DACA recipients still fly in the country? In theory, yes, right? And a work authorization is compliant with the real ID. Melly, any updates on what? Sorry. Is it DACA? Is that what you're asking about? Christian, I've been waiting for 6 years for my affirmative asylum interview in San Francisco. How long more? That's a long time. However, I've had cases that take 8, 9, 10 years. I can't tell you how much longer, right? We don't have a lot of transparency with the scheduling of asylum. It's just word of mouth in terms of what other attorneys are getting. What we do know is that asylums done online, filed online, are getting pretty quick interviews. Melly, any immigration news? Well, there's a lot of immigration news. I don't know what you want me to talk about, but there's a lot of immigration news. Any in particular that you wanna talk about? So much so that I can't keep up, right? So I just choose the things that I can really, look into, because I can't look into everything in detail. I would have no time. Peace. Hi, arrived age 4, 1974 with my mom, got permanent residency in 1987, no criminal record. Okay, becoming what? Maybe a US citizen? Is that what you're saying? US citizen? You should be fine. I don't know, it cut off. Negro 915, tourist visa revoked in January for no reason. Did FOIA, no records found, fingerprints. So are you saying you were trying to enter the country with a tourist visa? And they told you it was revoked, and then you went back, or what? What was the circumstances? And who did you FOIA? Peace. Yeah. So if you've been a permanent resident since 1987 and you don't have a criminal record and you've generally complied with filing taxes and you haven't been outside of the country for extended periods of time where you've renounced citizenship, you shouldn't have any issue filing for naturalization. Hola, mi hijo es militar, es militar mayor de edad. ¿Qué tiempo se demora el proceso? Como 1.5 a 2 años, si quieres hacer el proceso del parol militar y luego el ajuste, suponiendo que eres elegible. Who did you FOIA though for the visa? Did you FOIA the Department of State for the consular notes and CBP? I mean, there are records. There's definitely records. They often don't give them to you willingly, right? Yeah, you FOIA'd the wrong agency. That's why. USCIS is only going to have like petitions filed on your behalf. That's why you didn't get anything. There's a lot of different agencies found. They have different roles. Ziola Torta. What happens if I applied for VAWA but the abuse stopped? There's no requirement that the abuse be ongoing, right? It just shows that you were abused by a qualifying citizen or permanent resident, right? But it is, there's no requirement that it be ongoing. It's just that you at some point were, a victim of abuse. Now, keep in mind, there's a time frame for that. If you divorce, if it's on behalf of your spouse, right? So in terms of when the abuse happened and whether or not it's ongoing, that part isn't relevant that it's ongoing, but there is a time frame, right? Within 2 years of that divorce. So Bagas in 1992, what do I do if the I-130 and I-45 is pending but was paused because I entered with parole? Oh, the CHMV parole? Yeah, nothing right now. You can't really do much right now. I'm sorry. That's unfortunate. Because it's not just you, it's you and everybody else, right? So we'll see what happens with these. I think they will be, continue resuming. Just don't know when. Milena Chisco. The abuser has to be a citizen or a resident? Yes. In order to file for VAWA, don't be confused with VAWA and U visas, okay? U visas are victims of crimes, and there has to be a police report, and it has to be a certification signed by some agency to file for a U visa. In that case, the perpetrator of the crime, it doesn't matter what their status is. They don't need to be a citizen or a resident. However, when you're filing for VAWA, there is this requirement that the abuser is a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, as well as the connection to the, relationship. But unlike with the U visa, you don't need the criminal, case. You don't need a police report or some prosecution. Okay? Does that make sense? So on the one hand, you need, I don't want to say less evidence, but you don't have the requirement of the police report, but you do have the requirement of, the permanent resident or citizenship. Shakira, DACA wait times for renewal. I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months. Love and lyrics, that makes sense, but then what evidence would be acceptable? For what? For abuse? It really depends on the, relationship. You said, for example, Ziola Torta, I was filed for extreme psychological abuse for a child, but he moved out. Again, doesn't need to be ongoing. I would caution, the child abuse VAWA claims because there's a lot of fraud in this. So I would strongly suggest that you go to the USCIS page and look at how they define abuse. Okay. Because it is not just having, and I'm not saying this is you, nor am I accusing you. I just want to clarify this for anybody else listening, that it's not sufficient to just say, oh, like we have a contentious relationship. Well, yeah, anybody with a teenager has a contentious relationship with their child, right? Or that, we have a lot of arguments. That's not necessarily going to be extreme psychological abuse. Now, on the other hand, there are very legitimate psychological abuse claims. I have clients whose U.S. citizen children, for example, unfortunately have fallen into addiction, alcohol, drug abuse, a life of crime. They have to call police on their children. They feel unsafe in their own home. They've banned their children from coming home. Their children have stolen from them, right? They've stolen money to support their habits. So, there are very legitimate cases of that, but I do want to caution you against just simplifying it to, we have a contentious relationship, because so do I with my 4-year-old, right? It is, a higher level. Yeah, and I wasn't speaking to you, Ziola. I was just saying, in general, for anybody else listening, to consider, the especially if they've been told they qualify for VAWA and they've gone into the consultation with their child. I would say generally, attorneys, if we suspect abuse, are not going to have a consultation with the abuser, right? We would separate to screen for abuse, etc. Destiny, how much is a consultation? If you follow me, it's $100. Embellished in modes. With the Real ID and immigrant people wanting to fly domestically, will it no longer be safe to fly? It's not that it won't no longer be safe to fly, it's that you physically will not be able to fly, right? Like, you won't make it past TSA unless you are Real ID compliant. They just won't let you on a flight. Hello, chef, boss. Why is the I-130 taking so long? Nahel Patel. I don't know. And I don't know. I don't know what the category is, right? Some categories are just going to take longer they won't issue approvals until that priority date gets closer to becoming current. Kiola Nutrition. Soy residente. Tengo un hijo de 19 años que entró con visa esta. En 2016 puedo pedirlo. Un residente puede pedir a su hijo. Ahora aquí vienen unas cosas un poco, unas complejidades, ¿no? Donde, él mientras, entonces entró con inspección. De igual manera, no van a perdonar una presencia no legal en los Estados Unidos. Va a necesitar un perdón. Básicamente es lo que estoy diciendo. Va a necesitar un perdón, pero sí lo puedes pedir. Melody, can you get a U visa without a police report, but with a restraining order and hospital documents? You need a police agency to sign off on it. Now, it doesn't have to be a police department. It can also be a prosecutor. Okay. So if there is, for example, and I've successfully done this, I had a case where there was an order of protection. Okay. And there was no police report or involvement. It was just, it was an order of protection. But then the person violated the order of protection. And so then when you violate an order of protection, it's a crime. Even though it was a civil order of protection, it becomes a crime, at least in the state where I was, in Illinois. And they press charges for the violation of the order of protection. And then in that case, multiple people, family members, were protected under the order of protection. It was like the wife and then the mom and whatever. So we were able to get the prosecutor to sign off on both the wife and the other parties listed in the OP as being victims of the crime of domestic violence due to the violation of that order of protection. So, I don't know your case, but you need somebody to sign off on it, whether it's a police department or a prosecutor. Nihal Patel, I filed for my spouse who's in India right now. Are you a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident? Because that's going to dictate. Gomez, I have heard I-130 clients are getting court dates if they are undocumented. Is that true? So let's distinguish between undocumented, entered without inspection, and having removal orders. Those are three different kind of categories, right? You could have entered with a visa and be undocumented and have an I-130 pending. I haven't heard anything about that group of people. I have heard a rumor that people who entered without inspection and have I-130s pending, that they are calling them in for interviews. And sure, right? And then they're being issued a notice to appear after that. However, after that rumor, I've actually not heard of anybody actually, this happening to anyone. So I heard a rumor that an attorney said that a USCIS officer told them that this was going to happen, but I haven't heard of it actually happening. I'm not saying it hasn't. I'm just saying I haven't heard of it happening. And then there's a circumstance of somebody with a prior removal order going. That I have heard of, individuals being detained at their interview. Yeah, so Gomez, you said you heard from attorneys on here, and frankly, I think we all have the same source of information, which is one attorney who spoke to a supervisor or a USCIS officer who then spoke to a supervisor who said that they're going to start doing this, right? Issuing these interviews for anybody who entered without inspection and then issue an NTA. And that made its rounds, I think, in the immigration attorney community. And we talked about that in our office about what should we do about these cases. And I said, well, let's hold off a month to see if we actually hear of people being detained, right? Or being not detained, but issued an NTA. So we'll see. Oh my God, my glasses are hurting me. I have to switch. And my basket of glasses. I can't see. Oh, thank you. Wow, Frida and Bronny, if leaving for the 10-year ban, should she go to the U.S. Embassy once in Mexico to let them know? Yes. That's a tough decision. I don't want to say I'm impressed, but that's a tough decision. That's brave if someone's going to go ahead and leave for 10 years. Yes, they should tell them. They should tell them that they're there. They should check in, essentially, right? Okay, Nahel, you're a U.S. citizen and you petitioned for your wife. Yeah, your I-130 should take about a year and a half, maybe. Okay. Mari Guardado, can I talk quickly on the I-212? I have a chart that I always refer to on I-212s because I find them complicated and annoying. Okay. What would you like me to talk about? So an I-212 is to apply for readmission, right, to the United States after you've essentially been removed. And this includes expedited removals, right? So then I have this little chart that I always refer to. So if you've been removed expeditiously from the United States, then you're barred from reentry for a period of 5 years, right? And so if you want to reenter within that period, then you have to file that. If you have a regular removal order or voluntary departure, failure, which turned into a removal order, then it's 10 years. And so if you want to enter within that 10-year period, you need to file the I-212. There is, if you have multiple removals, 20 years, you might have, a permanent bar also where you re-entered without inspection or permission after a removal. Okay. That's the I-212. It depends if you're doing it outside of the country or inside of the country. If you're doing it with a I-601A, then, I sometimes do them at the same time. Okay. Does that answer your question, Mari? I don't know. Oh wow, Frida, there's no way to help my mom since she entered illegally. Yeah, unless you want to join the army. Alexis, I'm trying to follow. My husband is a naturalized US citizen from Mexico. Okay. He achieved this on his own after entering illegally. Should I worry for him now? He entered 20 years ago, citizen for 8 years. So generally, guys, if you're a citizen, right? If he obtained his citizenship properly, he hasn't committed crimes, he didn't submit fraudulent information, then usually, these individuals are safe and low risk of not being allowed reentry to the United States or having you know, anything be reviewed. So I don't think that you really need to be worried. I know that there's a lot of fear and like a lot of things going on in the media, but generally speaking, there are thousands of people being let into the United States every day who have visas, who are permanent residents, who are naturalized citizens, and it's business as normal. Okay. Cervantes, I don't know what you're asking about Chicago, but yes, our main office is in Chicago. Soy residente y pedí a mi esposo en el 2022 y aún no he recibido ninguna respuesta. Dependiendo de qué país es tu esposo, right, puede ser bastantes años. En este momento te digo el boletín, ¿no? De visas, pero, por ejemplo, si tu esposo es de México, ahora están como no aprobando, pero están vigentes las solicitudes de mayo de 2021. ¿Ok? Pues todavía no está el tuyo vigente. Somebody just asked me this. Can I get a replacement for my naturalization certificate? Yes. File form N565. Okay? McDon, my daughter is turning 21 on May 25th, but my T visa docs aren't submitted yet. Will it affect my petition yet? Is your daughter a US citizen? I'm trying to figure out how that's relevant. Mariah, what's the process of opening a withholding case with approved I-130? Are you AOS eligible, or would you need to do a I-601A waiver? I mean, either way, you have to file a motion to reopen. Oh, she's a derivative. Well, yeah. If you want her to be a derivative, then it has to be submitted before she turns 21. Jesus Lopez, I'm a DACA recipient and got my advance parole. Can I leave and come back? I don't know about you in particular, but I will say generally, DACA recipients who have advance parole, who don't have criminal history, who don't have a removal order, are still, my understanding is, traveling on advance parole without issue and being allowed reentry without issue. Now, you heard my asterisks and my caveats, and that's for a reason, right? If you have a removal order, if you've committed a crime, if you've lied to immigration in any kind of way, right? And clearly there's a risk. But if not, then you should be good. College student about to graduate, good, yeah, should be fine. It's for your husband's I-45, so he's adjustable? Yeah, then I would try, again, I would still, there are a lot of nuance. I would definitely do a consultation, Mariah, because where is it? Not where are you located? Are you eligible for Calderon? Is he eligible for Calderon? Is it worth it? Would you try that? But he's generally in a good place if he's adjustable. Dior Carlos, abused as a minor, only have CPS cases. Can that work for a U visa? If not, can I still report the abuse? It depends on what type of abuse, and I think it depends on the state. Some states have really, really long statutes of limitation for abuse of a minor, specifically sexual abuse of a minor. Um, some have no statute of limitation. In other words, you can make a report at any time. Others say, okay, once you turn 18 and you become an adult, you have X amount of time to file a report. So, I mean, interesting scenario. I would look into it for sure. Yezi, 601A processing time. I heard that there's some people getting approved from January 2023. That sounds about right because a few months ago it was like in November 2022. So that sounds about right. Carlos Martínez, hice PIP, la I-130 y tengo el I-601A. Hice huellas estatales y del FBI, aún me tengo que registrar. En teoría dicen que sí, right? En papel dicen que sí tienes que registrar, que eso no, no estás necesariamente registrado basado en lo que ellos publicaron. Sin embargo, ahora hay una herramienta en la página de UCIS y veo que muchas personas no saben, en este live me he dado cuenta de que muchos no saben de esta herramienta, entonces creo que voy a hacer un video sobre el tema, pero hay una herramienta en la página de UCIS ahora donde puedes ir y chequear si tienes que registrarte. Entonces te hacen una serie de preguntas, ¿vale? Y después te dicen si te tienes que registrar o no tienes que registrar. ¿Ok? All right. Creo que ya está. I'm done. I'm gassed out. I'm realizing I'm not giving great answers. So I've been on for almost an hour and a half. Oh, no, an hour and a half, an hour and 35 minutes. So follow me. I'm going to try. I always say I'm going to try to go live more than my once a week, but get back to twice a week. Consults are $100 if you're my follower, and my info's in my bio. Gracias, muchas gracias por estar. Estoy ya cansada, llevo hora y media. Pero si me siguen y quieren una consulta son $100, ¿ok? Que tengan buenas tardes.